Hi, I'm Shannon from Chip Theory Games, and today we're going to be talking about the Grovetenders from Cloudspire. The Grovetenders were once an introverted, quiet race. They are related to Ankar's plant matter and possibly created by the source itself. Though Grovetenders place culture, harmony, and peace among their greatest values, they have been forced into war. While fighting is not their first nature, the Grovetenders' creative minds and ability to shape fearsome constructs from surrounding plant life make them a formidable foe on the battlefield. When playing the Grovetenders, source is very important, so you have to use it wisely. Grovetender units tend to be higher in health, and they tend to grant a lower amount of source to your opponents when they defeat them. Overall, the Grovetenders are more reactionary, and that means that you have to time their talents wisely in order to be successful. And in particular, the use of the talent Summon should not be taken lightly. The Grovetender's starting hero is Dywen. She has a CP cost of 0, and on her basic side has 2 health, 1 attack, 2 movement, an upgrade capacity of 1, and a source reward of 2. Her terrain is forest, so she can move on forest, plains, and path. And she has the talent 2 range. On her promoted side, Dywen's health increases to 3, and there's no longer a source reward for defeating her. She also gains the talent Pacify. Instead of attacking an adjacent landmark minion, Dywen can discard it and gain 3 source. This is very useful for revealing source wells without having to deal with some of the talents that landmark minions have, and it's a great way to generate source, which the Grovetenders use a lot of. Grovetender's second hero is Ybanthe. She costs 4 CP to select, and on her basic side she has 5 health, which is quite high for a middle strength hero, as well as 1 attack, 2 movement, an upgrade capacity of 2, and a source reward of 2. Her terrain is forest, so she can move on forest, plains, and path, and she has the talent Summon. Summon is one of the Grovetender's key talents. In place of moving, Ybanthe can summon a new unit into play by spending source. 3 source will summon a Briar, 4 source for a Vineherald, and 5 source for a Tree. Let's say I'm summoning a Briar. So I'd spend 3 source for it and place it on the board. This talent works a little differently depending on if it's performed by a minion or a hero. For a hero such as Ybanthe, the summon unit comes in on its basic side on the closest path hex to the hero that summoned it. The summon unit does not get to move this turn. On her promoted side, Ybanthe's attack increases to 2. She has a higher movement of 3 and a higher source reward of 3 as well. Ybanthe also gains capture on her promoted side. When she defeats a faction minion, such as this Aegis, she'll capture it and place it beside the Grovetender fortress. It's not returned to the owning faction's barracks until that faction deals damage to the Grovetender fortress gate. The Grovetender's third and last hero is Wyvankaye, and she costs 7 CP to select. She has some unconventional stats for a 7 CP hero, but you'll understand better why when we talk about her talents. Her basic side has 2 health, no attack, 3 movement, she's unable to be upgraded, and there's no source reward granted for defeating her. Her terrain is forest, so once again she can walk on forest, plains, and path. And in terms of talents, her first talent is Peaceful. Wyvankaye can only be damaged by Merc heroes and Merc Spires. That includes damage from talents and retaliation, including Fortress Gate retaliation if she manages to get an attack stat. Wyvankaye cannot block the progress of other units, so if they would like to move into her hex, she must trade places with them. Wyvankaye's second talent is Yrtel's Way. She can use this either before or after her movement to simply return an adjacent faction minion with equal or less health than her to their barracks. She doesn't get source for this, but she does get to flip over to her promoted side. On her promoted side, Wyvankaye has an increased movement of 4, and instead of Yrtel's Way, we have Yrtel's Will. She also gains the ability to walk on mountain terrain. Before or after Wyvankaye's movement, you may either discard an adjacent landmark minion to gain 3 source, just like Dywen's Pacify talent, or she can remove all attack upgrades from an adjacent spire. When she uses this ability, she'll flip back to her basic side. So Wyvankaye can essentially alternate between Yrtel's Will and Yrtel's Way, flipping each time she uses one of them. Now let's talk about the Grovetender minions. We've already talked about how they get promoted. It's through the use of the talent Summon, but only when a Taproot minion uses it. And speaking of Taproots, they're the first minion we're going to talk about. Taproots are a staple of the Grovetender faction, with a very important job to do. Basic Taproots have 3 health, 1 attack, 2 movement, 2 source reward for defeating them, and can only move on path. They have the talent 2 range, which as we've discussed, allows them to attack and retaliate from up to 2 hexes away. They also have the talent Summon. We already talked about the Summon talent with Ybanthe, but it works slightly differently when a Taproot uses it. Note that the Taproot must be ungrouped to use the talent. In place of moving, you'll spend Source to summon a minion. 3 for a Warbriar, 4 for a Vineherald, or 5 for a Tree. We are going to summon a Warbriar. When summoned by a Taproot, it comes out on its promoted side. The Taproot flips to its promoted side, and the 2 units form a group with the summoned unit on top in the hex the Taproot was in. The group does not move this turn. Promoted Taproots go against the trend and are less powerful than their basic side. Their health and movement both go down to 1, and they lose the summon talent, meaning each Taproot will only get to summon once per wave. The next Grovetender minion is the Warbriar. The Grovetenders have 3 of them, and they cost just 2 CP to select, making them the least expensive Grovetender unit. Warbriars have 3 health, 1 attack, 2 movement, and grant just 1 source when defeated. They can only move on path, and their talent is Impale. At the end of the Warbriar's movement, it will deal 1 damage to all adjacent opposing units it was not previously adjacent to. On their promoted side, Warbriar's health increases to 4, and their attack goes up to 2, making them hit harder and last longer in battle. The next minion is the Vineherald. The Grovetenders have 2 of these, and they cost 3 CP to select. Vineheralds have 3 health, 1 attack, 2 movement, and a source reward of 1. They can only move on path, and they have the talent 2 range, which as we've discussed, allow them to attack and retaliate from up to 2 hexes away, and also attack flying units. Promoted Vineheralds have a health increase to 4, and they also gain the talent Capture. We've talked about this talent previously as well. It allows the Grovetenders to take any faction minion the Vineherald defeats, and keep it beside their fortress until that faction damages the Grovetender fortress gate. Treeds are the next minion we're going to talk about. The Grovetenders have 2 of them, and they cost 3 CP to select. Treeds have 4 health, 1 attack, 2 movement, and grant 2 source when defeated. They can only move on path, and they have the talent Ram. When you're attacking a Spire with a Treed, you can choose to remove an attack upgrade from the Spire, even if it's not on the bottom. In this case, the Spire would normally lose a range upgrade from the attack, but the Treed is able to remove the attack instead. On their promoted side, the Treed's health goes up to 5, their attack increases to 2, and their movement also increases to 3. As well, they gain the ability to move on forest and plains in addition to path. The Grovetenders have 1 Ogregrowth Minion, and it costs 5 CP for them to select. The Ogregrowth has 5 health, 2 attack, 2 movement, and 3 source reward for defeating it. It can only move on path, and it has the talent Rooted. Rooted means that if the Ogregrowth is adjacent to a Spire at the start of its movement, it can choose not to move. However, it has to move on its next turn, or the next turn it's able to make progress towards its mark. The Ogregrowth can be promoted through the talent Summon, just like other Grovetender minions. However, a particular fortress advancement must be purchased before this is allowed. On the promoted side, the Ogregrowth's health goes up to 6, and its attack goes up to 3. Promoted Ogregrowths also gain the talent Challenge, which means that any hero within 3 hexes of the Ogregrowth, such as Dywen here, cannot attack any other unit except the Ogregrowth. Dywen couldn't attack this bounty hunter in this case. Of course, the hero still has to have the Ogregrowth within its range, so if it doesn't, it cannot attack at all. The last Grovetender minion is the Grizzled Oak, and the Grovetenders only have 1 of them. The Grizzled Oak's health is 6, it has 2 attack, 1 movement, and a source reward of 3. It moves only on path and has no talents. On its promoted side, which again cannot be summoned unless a fortress advancement is purchased first, its health increases to 7 and its attack increases to 4. Its movement also increases to 2, and it gains the talent Crush. With their very high health and slow movement, as well as a high attack stat on its promoted side, it's a very scary minion to face for opponents. During its movement, instead of being blocked by a unit, the Grizzled Oak can move into its hex and force it to trade places. It deals 2 damage to the unit it swaps with as well. Shrubbery is a basic spire that offers protection to taproots and itself. It costs 4 to construct, and it starts with 1 range and 1 fortification upgrade. Its upgrade capacity is 2, and it grants 1 source when defeated. It has the talent Cover. A shrubbery can only be attacked by adjacent units, and even a spire with rays must be adjacent in order to attack it. so this Siege Tower and Drang are both unable to attack this shrubbery. As well, a Taproot that's adjacent to this spire will have any attack against it reduced to 1 damage at most. The Reetall is the Grovetender's other basic spire, offering defense against flying units. It costs 5 source to construct and starts with 1 attack and 1 range upgrade. It has a total upgrade capacity of 3, and it grants 2 source to the defeating faction. It has the talent Air Defense. Spires must have the talent Air Defense in order to attack units that have the talent Flying, such as Drang here thanks to its equipment Makeshift Wings. Creeping Vines are an advanced spire that can only be constructed after the Sacred Grove Level 2 Fortress Advancement is built. It's on the other side of the Shrubbery Spire. It costs 4 source to construct and starts with 1 attack and 1 fortification upgrade, with a total upgrade capacity of 3. It grants 2 source when defeated. It has the talent Cover, which is the same as Shrubbery, so it can only be attacked adjacently, and adjacent taproots can only take 1 damage from attacks. It also has the talent Creep. At the start of each of your turns in the onslaught phase, you can move the Creeping Vines to an adjacent non-path hex. Note that Source Wells are not considered valid for talents that affect non-path hexes, so the Creeping Vines cannot move onto another Source Well or back into its original Source Well once it moves off. The Grovetender's second advanced spire is the Muskeg, so it also requires Sacred Grove Level 2 before it can be constructed. It's on the other side of the Reetall Spire. It costs 5 source to construct and starts with 1 attack and 1 range upgrade. It grants 3 source when defeated. Its first talent is Air Defense, which, as we previously discussed, allows it to attack flying units, and it also has the talent Wallop. In place of attacking an adjacent unit, the Muskeg can deal 1 damage, and then place it up to 3 hexes away on any valid hex, meaning it has to match its terrain allowance and be connected to its mark with allowable terrain. After it's been moved, it can be fired upon by any new spires it's now within range of, such as this Reetall. Once the Wallop ability has been used, the Muskeg is flipped and becomes a Reetall, though it keeps its existing upgrades. Now let's talk about fortress advancements. The Grovetenders have a lot of interesting options here, but you have to be mindful of how you spend your source, since you also need it for summoning. The first fortress advancement structure is the Gateport, and it's all about manipulating Earthscape prices in the market. Level 1 is Earth Affinity. It costs 3 source, and any future Earthscape purchases are free for you, though you're still limited to 1 market purchase overall. Level 2 is Earth Influence. It costs 2 source, and now Earthscape purchases cost 5 source instead of 2 source for all other players. The next set of fortress advancements fall under the Sharpener. These are all about strengthening your defenses while weakening your opponent's defenses. Level 1 is Greater Thorns. It costs 5 source, and when your fortress is attacked, it will now deal 2 damage in retaliation instead of 1. Level 2 is Spire Precision. It costs 4 source, and when spires attack, any misses they roll will deal 1 damage instead of 0. This occurs for each miss rolled, even if other dice hit. Level 3 is Summon Roots. It costs 5 source, and it grants you the Root die. The Root die has 1 2, 2 3s, 2 4s, and 1 5. At the start of the onslaught phase, you can roll the Root die and remove the bottom upgrade from that many spires. However, the first spire you affect must be your own. So in order to remove an upgrade from the Siege Tower, I must also remove one from the Reetall. The Hall of Shaping is the next set of fortress advancements, and this focuses on taproots and summoning. Level 1 is Source Bath. It costs 3 source, and it reduces the source cost of taproots to summon by 1. This means Warbriars can now be summoned for 2 source, Vineheralds for 3, and Trees for 4. Note that this discount does not apply to summons performed by Ybanthe. Level 2 is the Shaping Pool. It costs 3 source, and it reduces the CP cost of a single taproot by 1 each wave, so you can select a taproot for only 2 CP instead of 3. Level 3 is Focus Growth. It costs 4 source, and it further reduces the source cost of taproots to summon by 2. This means taproots can now summon Warbriars at no cost, Vineheralds for 1 source, and Trees for 2 source. The next fortress advancement structure is the Sacred Grove, and it allows for source generation and advanced spires to come into play. Level 1 is Attuning. It costs 3 source, and it allows you to exchange 1 CP for 4 source once per wave during the prep phase. Level 2 is Forest Sentience. It costs 4 source, and allows you to construct the Creeping Vines and Muskeg advanced spires. The Forming Glade is the next set of Fortress advancements, and this allows for strengthening your units and summoning even stronger units. Level 1 is Basic Form. It costs 3 Source, and once per wave at the start of your turn during the Onslaught phase, you can take a Warbriar or Treed from your barracks and place it under a Grovetender hero that's either deploying this wave or on a Forest Hex. The Warbriar or Treed basically acts as an equipment, giving your hero their talent, in this case, Ram. If the hero is defeated, the minion goes back to your barracks. Level 2 is Elaborate Form. It costs 3 Source, and now when you summon, you can create an Ogregrowth by spending 7 Source, or a Grizzled Oak by spending 8 Source. Level 3 is Master Form. It costs 4 Source, and it gets you the Forming Die. The Forming Die has 3 sides that give 1 health, 2 sides that give an attack upgrade, and 1 side that gives a range upgrade. You can roll this die at the start of your turn during the Onslaught phase, and you can add the rolled result to any Grovetender in play. You can ignore your unit's health stat and upgrade capacity, and can even give the upgrades to a minion. However, you can only give the range upgrade to a ranged unit, as always. The last Fortress advancement structure is the Inner Oak, and this has a great mix of abilities from manipulation of your source income, gate health, and a die that your opponents will dread you rolling. Level 1 is Amplify. It costs 3 Source, and it gives you an additional 4 Source during each income phase. It also increases your maximum source capacity to 30. You can use the other side of your source tracker when you go above 20. Level 2 is Petrify. It costs 3 Source, and it allows you to recover 1 health to your Fortress Gate at the start of each prep phase. It also increases your maximum gate health to 15. You'll flip over your gate health tracker to the side that goes up to 15, but ensure you reset it to the same amount of health you were previously on. Level 3 is Ratify. It costs 3 Source and gets you the Ratify die, which you can roll at the start of the Onslaught phase and keep in your fortress until you decide to use it. It's usable once per wave, before or after all of your units move. 2 of its sides will return a Spire that has 1 upgrade and is adjacent to your unit to its barracks. 2 of its sides will force an adjacent opposing hero to return to its fortress. Remember, heroes do get to heal to full when this happens, but they generally can't redeploy until the next wave. The remaining 2 sides of this die allows you to convert an adjacent ungrouped faction minion with a CP cost of 3 or less to your faction. You'll get to control it as if it's yours for the remainder of the wave. You should place one of your unused minions underneath its chip as a reminder to players that it's under your control. This concludes our overview of the Grovetender faction. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.